Welcome back everyone, Casey with CX Mods. On our last video we installed some rear bumper LEDs on our RAV4, and today we're actually going to be adding some lighting products to the front end. As you can see, our RAV4 didn't come with fog lights from the factory, so we'll be installing fog lights. While we're at it, we've got some brighter LEDs we're going to install as well. And then the bezels are going to be the finishing touch on these. These have a DRL and then a sequential turn signal that should look really nice once installed. To get started, first things first, the bumper needs to come off, so we'll get going there. So a lot of this stuff is held in place by 10mm bolts and then some push clips. We've got some 10 mils up here and mainly push clips in the middle, and then we got a row of 10mm bolts on the bottom. And then the biggest thing is just going to be unclipping the fender flares to get those out of the way. Once we get that done, the bumper should come off. If anything comes up in the meantime that I need to display for any reason, I'll include that in the video. Now that we have the bumper off, I'm going to actually start with the bezel wiring harness first, since it's a little simpler and I kind of just want to get the wiring where I want it and zip tied up and finished before we start working on installing the fog lights and the bezels on the bumper. So on the fog light bezel wiring harness, the longer wiring for the bezel goes to the passenger side. So I'm just going to kind of put it there for now and then make sure that the driver's side has enough room. And then it's our cat's feeder, so hopefully she's hungry. And then the longer yellow wire is also going to be for the passenger side. And that's going to go up to the turn signal. So you can sneak that through here, get that close to where that's at. And then the turn signal bulb and connector is super accessible. So we'll just kind of put them next to each other there. We'll get those tied in together later. So that's the driver bezel connector, and then this is going to be the ground, which we can run up here and then find a bolt on the body to mount that to. And this is the other turn signal connector that's going to go on this turn signal. Next to each other. And then lastly, we got the power cable. So we're gonna end up connecting this up here as well. So now that doesn't look as bad, and kind of have an idea of where everything's going. And one thing to know, I am gonna get rid of these T-taps on here. I messed with them a little bit and they weren't getting a good connection. So I'm going to end up going with the posi tabs. Just going to give a quick rundown on the bezel wiring. So this is where all the wiring splits off. This is the driver's side bezel connector. You've got the turn signal, positive and negative wires going up here. Here's that turn signal wire on the factory turn signal harness. The yellow wire goes to the white and green wire. And then if you move up here, I've got an add a fuse for the positive cable, and then the ground wire there. And then this is for the passenger bezel connector and turn signal. There's the bezel connector, and then we've got the turn signal wire connected to the green wire on the turn signal harness. So we got this all buttoned up. Now I will work on the fog light harness. Now I'm going to work on mocking up the fog light wiring harness. The longer connector, same goes for the DRL, goes on the passenger side. So I'll kind of hug that with all that other wiring over there. And then the splits off for the driver fog light. And then the rest of this, the relay, yellow and red wire and the ground are gonna get tucked up in there. And then the biggest part of this job is getting the fog light wiring up inside the cabin. So I'll have to remove the fender liner to get to a spot where there's a little grommet or a rubber seal that we can run this through. So I'm gonna kind of place everything where it needs to go. I'll hook this stuff up where it needs to go, and then the next thing I'll show you is fishing this through the firewall. I ended up having to fully remove the fender flare on this side and then pull down the fender liner, but I found our point of entry right there is going to be, I think it's the hood pull cable. So since this connector isn't going to be able to go through that hole, you'll have to pull these wires out of inside this. You just need to get a little pick or like a little screwdriver, tiny one, to just push that pin in so you can pull these out, because then we're going to run these wires from inside the cabin out through that hole. Sorry if this is a lot to look at, but I just want to make sure I hit all the key points inside the vehicle, make sure that this video is not too long. But you'll want to remove the bottom panel, this little kick panel, and then this one over here, and then that'll allow you to pull this panel out with all the switches on it. I've already got the fog light switch in there. You just want to pull the blank one out from the back. There's just little clips on the side. You'll get a flat head in there, and then you can get it out of there. Once you get the button in there, you'll connect the wiring harness back onto it. You can see that down there. And then that hole I showed you earlier, I ran a hanger through it. So then I will twist these wires onto that, pull that through, and then we can get it connected back onto the harness. All right, so I have the wiring zip tied to the hanger. Moment of truth here. Perfect. Here's the final rundown on the fog light wiring. So I've got the longest wire for the fog lights going to the passenger side, all running where everything else is, and the driver fog light connector, and then everything else is ran up through this little gap here. So then we've got the relay, both grounds for the DRL and the fog light is there. And then we've got the power. This power is to an ADAFuse, and it's to the horn. That's a constant. Since that's on a relay, we should be good with that. And then I actually tapped the yellow wire into that red wire, since I didn't really see a difference in hooking that up to anything else, and it seems to be running fine. And then just for reference, I did switch the DRL ADAFuse to a USB 2, since the headlight fuse for some reason was constant, but the headlights weren't on, so not sure what the deal is, but I switched it, found a fuse that I like. That's going to be always on with the ignition on, which I'll always have the DRLs on, so it won't bother me. I'm going to button all the wiring up, and then we'll get to installing the fog light bezels. So this is going to be the back side of the passenger side factory bezel. All we have to do is unclip these, and then this will come out. So I'll do that now. I'm going to push in the new bezel. good enough for now. And then on the fog light bracket, unfortunately, they mimicked the factory bracket, which does not have a spot here where the DRL light's at, because I've tested it. If you remove this, the factory one fits. So there's a recess in the factory bezel, which we don't have now. And this little jet out here has to come off. So I'm gonna start cutting off kind of where that line's at, and then hopefully it should go into the bezel. But I'll cut that off and then come back. I've got the fog light housing in the bracket, but you can see that I cut off that front section that would prevent us from installing the bracket. And we should be able to mount that up to the holes on the bezel. And I'll do that now. Started. All right, so we should be good. I'm actually gonna replace this LED now. We've got our upgraded LED, and you'll be able to see the difference in the size of the chip. So there'll be a considerably big difference in the brightness. And then we went with just a 6000K, so it's a white light output. So we're good there, and then we'll go to the other side. Alright, so all the wiring's complete. Before I put the bumper back on, I'm just going to test everything real quick just to make sure everything's working correctly. So we should be good. We're all done. Installation really wasn't that bad. It will take a while. I would say if I wasn't doing the video at the same time, it'd be a couple hours. But I found it easiest, like I did in the video, to put out the wiring first, start with the DRL bezels, get that wired up, and then do the fog light wiring, and then install the bezels and fogs on the bumper, and then pretty much just put the bumper back on. But it's really not that bad. I would say it's worth it for sure. I wanted fog lights anyways, and then these DRL and sequential turn signal bezels popped up with the fog light kit, so knew we had to have them. I think they look great. I also upgraded the LED, or the front turn signals to LEDs as well, so it's not super bright, it just fills in that spot a little bit more. Did that in the rear turns as well, so definitely a good upgrade there. But really, install is not bad. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to email us at sales@cxmods.com or find us on social media and message us there. Thanks.